And welcome back, everyone, to another edition of Going for Two, presented by our friends at Home Field Apparel. It is good to be back, everyone. I am Matt Brown. I'm the publisher of the Extra Points newsletter. That's part of the D1 Ticker family. I'm joined here by my colleague, Bryan Fischer. It's lovely to see you, Bryan. It's good to be back.
Well, I'm sure it's lovely to see me because you're nice and toasty there in your home office. But I got to admit, I know it's Thanksgiving this week. We're only taping one episode ahead of the holiday. But you, sir, you might be the Grinch that stole Christmas for a lot of folks this week.
I am. We were joking about this off air. I've definitely been removed from some Christmas card lists, and I want to make this very clear. I am not the person that postponed EA Sports college football. I am merely the person who got the email, made the phone calls, confirmed the news, and shared it. If it was up to me, we'd be playing it right now. Although the game probably wouldn't be very good if that was the case. Why don't we just go ahead and jump right into that? Because that seems to be the only thing anybody wants to talk about right now. If you by somehow have listened to this show and read this newsletter and are unaware, on Tuesday morning, EA Sports, in an interview with ESPN, confirmed that the reiteration of the college football video game project, EA Sports College Football, is now going to be released in the summer of 2024. I had previously reported, along with The Athletic and 247 and other legitimate news outlets, had reported that EA was planning on releasing that game next summer in 2023. I saw that the head of EA, I believe, in that interview with ESPN, said, listen, you was pushing back real hard. So you can't call this a delay because we never said the game was coming out in 2023. That was based on rumor and conjecture. Well, I want to be a serious professional, so I'm going to use professional language. And I would merely say, as the person that I believe first reported that news and shared it, I wasn't making it up, man. Like every date that you saw was something that I had a written receipt from when EA's communication to CLC to member institutions, and what was verified by people that had direct conversations with EA Sports. So don't blame me. Don't say that this was the message board people running amok or anything here, right? Like this, everything that I said, I've got a PDF for on the computer, and if EA insinuates that I don't have integrity again, I will share all those receipts. Just that they have postponed the game. And I imagine, Bryan, you'd probably like to know, maybe our listeners would like to know why, right?
I think once they get over the initial disappointment of having to wait another year, which, let's face it, I think there's just so much pent up hope over this one single video game. I think that's why the news kind of hit a little bit harder, knowing that you'd just be that much further removed from actually being back playing a game, especially for those of us that actually used to play this game for hours and hours upon end.
There's definitely a particular generation of people, sports writers in their early 30s to early 40s, that I think are especially broken up about this because this was how we spent our high school and college years. There's a couple of reasons for this, and this reporting is coming from the information I gleaned from the communication sent to member institutions, from the, for whatever reason, spiked EA statement that they shared with those schools, and what I've heard from people directly familiar with the project. There's a couple of reasons for this delay. The single most important, although I realize this runs counter to the conventional internet speculation right now, the single most important is game's not ready. It's not about NIL licensing. It's not about Notre Dame licensing. It's about game's not ready. And I can tell you there's a couple of reasons why the game wouldn't be ready, right? One is, not to veer too far away from college sports news and into gamer news, a lot of AAA video game titles over the last year and a half to 2 years have been postponed throughout their development cycle. COVID made making video games really hard. Just like it made building lots of things really hard. You had a shortage of talent. You had a shortage of project managers. You had people that weren't able to work the same number of hours that they normally would. You weren't having people centralized in offices for the beginning architecture process of this. And that overlapped with part of the development of this game. Just like a lot of other games have seen production delays because of that. You also have production delays with the hardware. There's a good chance that even if you want a PlayStation 5 right now, you might not have one. I did some things I wasn't proud of to go get a PlayStation 5 early in the nothing illegal. to go get one. And you still really can't walk into a Target or a Best Buy and go grab one. And that's what this game is going to be on, right? So the waiting out that a little bit increases the potential demand or market for the game. The other thing, and I've said this several times, and it's not sinking into the internet. So let me say it one more time here. And every time I do an interview about this for the next month, I'm going to say this. The game is not a Madden reskin. And fundamentally, it really can't be a Madden reskin. If it was, the people at EA have told me the game would be out by now. If the only thing we needed to do was slap an Ohio State and a Penn State helmet on the Madden game and throw in some slapdash recruiting functionality in franchise mode, this game would exist. And the reason they can't do that is twofold. One, the literal game of football of the NFL and college is different. The playbooks are different. You're going to need different animations. You're going to need on some level different physics, and you can't, like, RPOs are not used the same way in the NFL as they are in college. The option-based offense is different in college than it is the NFL. The scheme of potential football plays, not the same. You can't just port one over the other, even if you're using the similar engine. The other thing is, it's been impressed upon me very clearly that they really want to get this first game right from a gameplay perspective, because you can't tear down a sports video game to the studs and re-release it every year. Like, this is the worst kept secret in the industry. I have NBA 2K on my PlayStation in the other room, and I will probably play it this evening. That has some changes to last year's release. It's not a completely fundamentally different game because you can't redo that every 6 months. Video games are too complicated and too expensive. So you have to make sure the base version of the game is as structurally sound as you possibly can to support innovations and everything moving forward. It ruins the business otherwise. And that is taking more time than they thought. Is there an NIL licensure component issue to this? Yeah, that is an issue. We've talked about it here before. Getting player likenesses is an absolute enormous pain in the ass right now. There's no other polite way of saying it, because there's no union and there's so many third parties you have to navigate to secure this many people. But they could have gotten that done in time and made the 2023 deadline. Like, that's just one of the factors. The unpopular, unfulfilling, frustrating truth is game's not ready yet. And it takes more time to get the animations and the physics and the fundamental structure of this game ready to go.
And you got to remember, excuse me, you got to remember that EA Sports they still got to put out another Madden next year. You know, like, the continued video game development of a lot of their other franchises is still going on. They have to kind of create all this kind of from scratch almost. Yes, you can reuse some things, but it is a completely new video game. So you got to remember that. And, to your point about the hardware, I think that is another thing that is kind of left unsaid with all this, is that maybe we're getting to the end of some of those supply chain issues with Xbox. I heard Phil Schiller, who runs the Xbox for Microsoft, saying that maybe by early next year that will not be the case. But if you're EA Sports and you want to play these on Xbox X and on PS5, you want to make sure that market is fully addressed, and everybody has their consoles so they can go out and buy these games. And I'm sure everybody's going to point to NIL, and they continue to do so when I see them on social media. And I do think that's funny, because that's probably going to be one of the last components that are really going to be put in place, because they could have always put in generic rosters. Like, that is not something that would have prevented this game from being released. To EA Sport, to CLC, do all these schools want current athletes to kind of take advantage and be able to go out there and buy a video game with their actual likeness and get some money from that? Absolutely. But that component, is kind of one of those things that is going to have to come behind actually getting that video game out. And so it's a disappointing delay, but I think it's, when you kind of drill down into the details as you just did, it's at least understandable.
It is. I get it. So the other thing that I can add that is different from the ESPN stories, this is a small detail, but in the ESPN story, they're like, well, we can't actually confirm who the announcers are. Like, the press release says recognizable commentators. They wouldn't divulge any names. And I've talked to ESPN PR and said, hey, I'm hearing these names. Can you confirm those? And they said, we don't really have any comment right now. We appreciate you asking. Well, one of the benefits of sending my ass all the way to Montana, where it's -6 below and it's the surface of Hoth, so I get a chance to talk to people on the game day set. So I just asked, hey, David Pollock, are you going to be in the game next year? And he goes, yeah, and walks off. And I asked Reese Davis, like, hey, are you going to be at the game? And Reese, being the consummate professional, smiles and goes, well, I don't know how I'm supposed to answer that exactly, but I did just tell you that I used to play this video game, and boy, I'm sure going to be really busy next Monday, right? And so yes, Reese is going to be in the game. I've had multiple people tell me that Herb Street is going to be in the game. I can't specifically confirm Fowler or not because he wasn't there. I didn't get to talk to him. Like, that seems to be a reasonable assumption, but I'm not saying that's confirmed because I don't know exactly yet. But those three people have said, yes, we are going to be recording voice stuff for the game. And I would imagine other ESPN personalities will be a part of it. And it stinks that it's not going to be next summer, but the summer after. But that's what they told me. And I know that they've been recording some of that audio stuff there for a while because you can't use any of the stuff from 2014. Like this is I understand why consumers think this, and I'm learning a little bit about the video game media and video game journalism, I think, because that's not the world I typically live in. You can't just re-release NCAA 14. You can't do that for legal reasons because that game got you sued to begin with, and you still haven't paid people, or you don't want to attract that kind of attention again. And also, that was 2 video game consoles ago. You had like that you can't just copy and paste like NCAA 14 code.zip and stick it in your computer and bloop bloop bloop. Now it works. I would think that because I'm an idiot, but then people have explained to me who actually work in this process, like, no, like it's not apples to orange. It's not apples to apples. And you can't use the audio. You can't use the stadium files. You can't use the image assets you had before. You got to completely restart. Stinks that it's taken this long, but that's where we are right now.
And my hope is, at least with this kind of pause in development, or at least the extended timeline for development, that not just the console game itself will be good, but we're already seeing in the video game industry the ability to kind of stream and play anywhere. Hopefully the mobile games, the PC games, really being able to play NCAA football wherever we're at, maybe at a tailgate before going into an actual football game. That aspect gets nailed down, and that'll make it a little bit more fun when the thing rolls around. And you also got to keep in mind that it could coincide kind of nicely with an expanded college football playoff, everything kind of coming together right there in 2024. A lot of NCAA changes likely to take into effect in 2024. So maybe that's just kind of the big year that a lot of college athletics fans are going to have to get used to.
That's a good point. To whatever college football looks like in the proverbial future, 2024 seems like a year where that's going to be a new modern era of this sport, not just with the playoff, but potentially further professionalization of athletes. It's going to be far enough past the transformation committee where we can get a legitimate idea for what that means and who's up and who's down and everything. Sucks for consumers. My hope, you're right, is that this becomes the best game it could possibly be across multiple platforms, whether that's console, whether that's mobile. That wasn't really a thing for previous versions of this game. Whether that is whether, I don't know if there's like a web app component to it or anything, or if there's what kind of customization options are going to be available. I don't know. I would like it to be the best that it possibly can be. I think the last thing that I'll say is I fundamentally understand why the impulse on the internet is just to immediately think that EA sucks and that they're incapable of producing anything good. I bought the new Mass Effect game, which sucks. And like I pre-ordered it, right? I spent $65 on it. I remember being how disappointed. And I don't play a ton of non-sports games, but I know enough about like the consumer frustrations with this company and everything. So I can't promise it's going to be good. Guys, I haven't played it. No one's let me play test it, or I'm not in the game. I haven't done any of that stuff yet. I do just feel confident knowing what I've learned about video game development is that it's not just going to be a slapdash reskin. If it's bad, it's going to be bad on its own merits. And if it's good, it's going to be good for reasons it's fundamentally different from Madden. And I will tell you that as long as I'm doing extra points, because man, I'm not saying I'm quitting, but like, who knows what we're doing in 2 years, man? Like, who knows? As long as I'm doing this, I will do my very best to get additional information that I feel really confident about, that I can verify, that has receipts, to let you know about how this game's development impacts you, the consumer, and the players, and the third parties in the schools, all of those things. I will continue to do that. I can't promise I'll be first every time because I'm just one dude who didn't go to journalism school, but I will continue to do my very best.
Well, if you want to continue to keep Matt afloat in terms of going after and pursuing a lot of these EA Sports video game scoops, the best way to do that, of course, is to subscribe to Extra Point.
That is true. And listen, we're recording this here on Tuesday. This whole week, Black Friday sale, even though it's not Friday, go on Extra Points. You could get a annual subscription for 25% off. So it's like $54. It normally retails at 75. I'm going to tell you guys a little secret. So there's a pretty decent chance we're going to raise the price in 2023 for some of these things. So like now would be a good time to get into it, get every single newsletter. I've been telling people, like, I feel bad constantly begging for those subscriptions, and we do make money in a couple of other ways. But so like part of why I think it's important to be really transparent about what exactly that money goes for, right? Some of that money literally, goes to my salary. It's which, pays for Lunchables and clothes for my kids and my own gas and all that kind of stuff, right? It also goes to things that produce journalism, and also that to keep the site going itself. Pays for Ghost, which is our CMS. It pays for our tech stack. It pays for the tools we need to keep everything running. It pays for the FOIA fees. And I file a lot of these things, particularly for EA Sports, but also coaching contracts. And we'll do those as those coaches are hired this cycle and game schedules. And it also allows me to hit the road sometimes, whether that's to academic conferences, whether that's to the SBJ event in Vegas here in a couple of weeks. I'm actually going to Connecticut and potentially Massachusetts, maybe some FCS football stuff after Thanksgiving. And then, of course, like you probably see in the newsletter, out to Montana. I'd never been to Montana before, but I was there for the Brawl of the Wild. College game day was there. That was not the cheapest trip that we've ever taken. Like, I don't mind saying that. Part of that kind of digs into the story here. I did not really appreciate how much Bozeman had blown up over the past couple of years. This is not that big of a town, right? Like, it's one of the biggest cities in Montana. It would be a moderately sized suburb of Chicago. Chicago is bigger than all of Montana. And if you're in a city that was 20,000 people and is now 45, 55,000 people 15 years later, you don't have enough hotel rooms. You don't have enough roads. You don't have enough houses. You don't have enough water. So like even a month before game day, I couldn't get a place to stay. I had to go stay out in a neighboring town. But I got to tell you, even though that was as cold as I've been in my entire life, and I know I've belabored this point, but Brian, it was just so freaking cold, man. The closest version, analog I could think to it would be the Egg Bowl, both in terms of like proximity and like ag school, white collar rivalry and stakes and hate, like, which is one of I think the cooler rivalries in college football. A really fun game and a really cool part of the country. It's a place that I was telling them, like, I would love to come back in May or June, maybe July. I promise I won't move here. I promise I'll tell other people not to move here, but I'd love to come back and visit because it's a cool athletic department. It's a cool school. It's a cool town. And Montana State should be a real, I don't want to say bear because that's Montana, but they're going to be very tough out, I think, in the playoffs. That's one of the most fun offenses I've ever seen in person.
Well, I love the Big Sky this year. I think the Big Sky is having quite the renaissance. You got them. Sacramento State was the number 2 seed in the FCS playoff. They've got a really fun offense as well, and it's just been one of those years where the league has kind of risen up, and there are a lot of good schools like that. But you're right. It's funny. I didn't want to text you while I was out there at the Rose Bowl for USC UCLA. I was feeling a little hot. I was picking up my credentials. It was like 75. Was sitting in the sun. I didn't want to say anything, knowing that it was that cold. But
I would have literally called you had you texted me, and I would have said, with love, some Montanan words, because I thought I cussed a lot. This is a fan base that is very comfortable with profanity.
Yeah, I can imagine, given the state of things there in Montana. But I just kind of wish maybe the game would have been a little bit closer. That would have been a little bit more fun for you. But I mean, you're right. Just seeing the two schools and the two fan bases interact. I mean, it is we so much think about rivalries when Duke, North Carolina, and the Iron Bowl and those ones. But these are what make really the fabric of college football. And it's it's going against your neighbor, and it's going against, you know, your coworker.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's quite the case. And maybe the coworkers are spread out by a couple of miles there in Montana, but you know, it is a special place and a special rivalry. And I'm definitely gonna got it on my bucket list. The other thing that I was just thinking about, you know, I was looking at the Grey Cup, watching the Grey Cup a little bit this week, and I was like, man, it is warmer there where they're having that than it was for you guys out in Montana. So I was like,
dude, we're talking like the surface of the moon. I legitimately don't think was that much colder when you factor in wind chill. Even though I know it's only said -5, I'm telling you, after being out there for 6 hours.
Well, that's the thing that gets you is you were out there for so long, you know, especially in the morning where you got that it's just a weirder chill. I think, you know, when you get into the mountainous climate and the northern climate, that morning chill, maybe it's probably because there's no humidity, and it's just an extra like ice biting. I don't know how better to describe it.
It cut through everything, right? Like I have warm clothes. I live in Chicago. But I remember when I pulled into the stadium, and it was just after 5 o'clock in the morning. They had just opened things up. And I'm parked in like this little grassy lot surrounded by a chain link fence behind the stadium. It's called the nursery lot. And there's a family of deer that were like waiting in my parking spot. And I get out of the car now, just like where I live, if you see deer, they pee their pants and they run away. And here they're like, we're not, we know you don't, we know you're unarmed. Like we know we're neutral ground. They're walking up to me. They're completely unafraid. I'm just like, this is not where I live. This is a different kind of place. The one thing I think that I didn't really write about a whole lot, because I did drop like 4,000 words on this rivalry, and I'm proud of it. I think you'd enjoy reading it if you haven't. If you are somebody that's thinking about watching some FCS football over the course of the playoffs here, or if you're a Pac-12 school or a Mountain West school that's going to need a new offensive coordinator, you should watch Montana State, because they remind me, they're like a colder version of Coastal Carolina. Like this is it's a run first, run second kind of offense. They ran for over 400 on Montana. I don't know from what I saw if it wasn't just option. Like I wouldn't say that it's like they're not really lining up in the single wing or trying to pull Navy kind of stuff and everything. But one, Lance Leipold in Kansas does this a little bit, I think, and I think a couple other schools do. You would sometimes see two quarterbacks on the field and one lead blocks for the other, or two quarterbacks, neither of them's throwing, right? And from the press box, it's just a delight to see, all right, is this going to be a jet sweep? Is it one of these four running backs that's going to carry the ball? There's a ton of misdirection. And I am not a ball knower or somebody who typically gets as excited about this. But if you want to see a tight end just absolutely murder somebody in the second level in run blocking and with speed and violence, this is the offense for you. I mean, when they do pass, which they do occasionally, it's a very high efficiency passing offense, and one that gets tight ends and running backs there involved. I mean, they could have scored 60, and not just because they had a little bit of fortuitous turnover luck. So if I was somebody like, I don't know, Cal, who desperately needs to get an offensive identity going and isn't blessed with an enormous amount of speed, I might be looking at seeing if I can hire somebody from there. If Wyoming ends up, Craig Bowl ends up retiring in a year or two, I look at this staff.
Well, Brent Vegan was at Wyoming with Craig Bowl, I believe, before he took that job. So
I want to say he's from there.
I know I think he played at North Dakota State. I know he was assistant there for a long time. But like a lot of these guys too, especially in the Big Sky country, I think it's also you can kind of keep in mind that even if they're head coaches now, just given the way the salaries are, for some of these Power 5 OC jobs, you could literally double or triple your salary, in a lot of cases. And, if you're comfortable, maybe thinking instead of going from I'm running my FCS program, and maybe it's a very successful job, you like being at a place like that, totally understand that. But at the same time, if you kind of have your eyes on taking a Power 5 gig eventually, I mean, a lot of the times it's like, all right, maybe I got to go be at a Power 5 school in order to get ADs comfortable with the fact that, hey, I know what it takes in terms of the ins and outs of the differences between running an FCS program and what it takes behind the scenes running a Power 5 program. So, a lot of those head coaches could even be up for some OC gigs, especially as we talk about with the coaching carousel. I'm sure we'll get into it next week after Black Monday and Black Sunday on the coaching carousel as a few folks understandably get some bad news. I think there are going to be quite a few OC openings as well across the country, and schools that will typically are going to pay over the $1 million mark for the next guy. So keep that in mind as well when we talk about some of these coaches.
It happens not irregularly where someone decides to make that change. I mean, yeah, if you're an OC, and this actually kind of came up in some of the conversations at Montana State, and this is something that is an issue at San Jose State. It's an issue sometimes in other places in California or in very high rent or high cost of living places where the salaries don't necessarily match up to that. And you could be a running backs coach at a place like Montana State and make $85,000, $90,000, right? It's a good amount of money. But if the median rent's $2,200 and there's no houses available, suddenly you might decide maybe this isn't the best fit for me and my family. Maybe I'll go take a different job, or maybe even a lower profile job where my money can stretch a little bit more. Which is one of the challenges, right? Like the people at the school are saying, look, if we get people on campus, we can generally get them to commit, and whether that's an athlete or, quite frankly, a staffer, right? And I walked off the plane too and was like, I looked out the window for 30 minutes. Like, how does anyone do any work around here, right?
Yeah.
But I also need to buy a house, so like these are things to think about, and so it's potentially not that the school needs one. I'm just picking one off the top of my head. Like if Oregon State called and said we need a new DC, Cal Poly head coach or something. Do you want to, Corvallis is a little bit cheaper. And also here's $450,000. I get why you'd think about that. We can make fun of like at the high end SEC coaches with their all generational amounts of money. 450 grand's a lot of money. That's not generational amount of money. Like I can understand, wanting to make a move from a place where you're comfortable. If somebody offered you that, if ESPN offered you 450 grand, we'd understand. Like that's a lot of money. One other thing I think, just very quickly, I want to point out here. Have you had a chance to look too carefully at the FCS bracket?
I was looking at it the other day, as a matter of fact, because the games start this week on Saturday, and it's the first round games. I think everybody kind of gets drawn to the ones that had the early buys and the top 8 seeds there. But I'm more excited about this FCS bracket than I think it have been in a long time, and some of it has to do with kind of North Dakota State not being the quite all encompassing behemoth that they normally are, and so it feels like one of the more wide open FCS tournaments that I can remember, at least in the last decade plus.
In the last several years, for sure. So I'll give you just a couple storylines as somebody that admittedly has not been following this deeply every single week. Although I think I know maybe a little bit more than the average bear compared to your typical national FBS guy, just by virtue of what we're looking at. A couple of things to monitor. You're right. Number one, North Dakota State is not entering this thing as the prohibitive favorite. They are a 3 seed, and I think the general consensus among FCS watchers is that they are overrated. And if you had that profile for somebody that wasn't North Dakota State, they'd be a 5 or a 6. There's a little bit of the Alabama benefit of the doubt, which understandably, given that they've killed everybody the last day.
They've been that way before, where they kind of came in, you think this is a down year, and then they end up winning the title. So you totally get the benefit of the doubt for sure.
Yep, that's absolutely true. It's been a banner year for the Patriot League. Not typically a 2-bid league. You have the champion there. I think only Crossman undefeated. They're like an actual national seed, which doesn't happen very often. Absolutely a program both at the head coach and coordinator level that is going to be in high FBS demand. Especially as schools like Boston College may potentially need to make big staff changes. This is going to be a place where they're going to look, but then that's as a more of a defensive oriented outfit. But then you've also got Fordham, the favorite here of college football internet, because they score a gajillion points a game. They've got a really fun passing attack. I think it's hard for a Pat League team to make a deep run because you just don't have the scholarship depth as some of these other teams do. But seeing if what Fordham does against a pretty decent New Hampshire team and what a historic turn for this league looks like in the playoffs, I think will be interesting. On the other side of that, like this, you see a couple of teams that are like more blue bloodish at this level, like your Delaware and Montana. Like St. Francis is pretty good. I think they put an FBS team in hell for a big part of the beginning of the year. They're kind of overperforming. Some teams like Montana and Delaware might have also gotten a little bit of brand benefit of the doubt when they come in there. Like, don't be shocked if they don't make super deep runs. And then finally, Idaho's back. Good for you, Idaho. We've missed you. After I think a lot of people, a lot of casual fans expected Idaho to be competing pretty quickly after reclassifying from FBS. Was not the case. And I talked to some people close to the program about this a few years ago, and it was, you can build a roster that's well equipped to face Sunbelt teams and just like not have a good schematic fit to face Big Sky teams. Like you might be too big and too slow, and not be able to play well. And also, there's a lot of Petrino in that program. Sometimes that works well. Sometimes that doesn't work as well. Not as much Petrino at Idaho now. They're back in the playoff. Happy for the Vandals and for people that have been waiting a while to see postseason football there.
Yeah, and Jason Eck, definitely one of the names kind of to watch. He's done a good job not only turning around the Vandals there, but he's played at Wisconsin, before. He's got those connections to the bigger schools, so he's definitely a name that I think has come up, especially as he kind of think through the coaching carousel as the dominoes start to fall. Whether some openings might give him a look.
Yeah, I don't want to. I don't like thinking of FCS football purely in the vein of look for some dudes who might become coaches or transfer portal guys, because I think that these are games that have merit and passionate fan bases on their own. However, if you're a Cal fan or an Oregon State fan or a fan that might have a head coach opening or something and you want to watch it that way, you're welcome to, and I think you'll be entertained. There's one other thing I want to talk about here before we let people go here to enjoy their break. But before we do want to spotlight our dear friends at Home Field Apparel. You might have heard of them. They are a company that makes the most comfortable, unique collegiate apparel that you're going to be able to find anywhere. They're our title sponsor. They've been with us and supporting us for a long time. That trip to Montana was some of the most consecutive days I have not worn home field, and that was just because I had to wear flannel every single day. Like, it's funny, like I was even thinking about this because normally I overdress when I go to games and press boxes. And I think part of that is a wanting to act out against the blogger stereotype from being at SB Nation so long. And so I could be like, I got to show these people I have a tie. I got you right. None of that in this game. No, this is just flannel, jean jacket, sheepskin, Carhartt, everything. And the home field was not involved. But if you're not going to go cover Hoth Tech, you'd be very comfortable in some kind of home field apparel, and maybe even if you work, because they do make jackets now. But all kinds of Power 5 official licensed apparel, G5, FCS, 1 AAA, Division 3. You can find a lot of it with our dear friends here. I am, of course, wearing a home field shirt right now. I'm wearing my classic Nebraska Bug Eater shirts. Brian is wearing a shirt with buttons and a collar. Completely forgetting the memo. We are not sponsored by Kohl's. We are sponsored by
this is definitely not a Kohl's shirt. I'm just gonna stop you here, but
there's nothing wrong with Kohl's.
Not to say anything about Kohl's. There's one right around the corner I like going, especially taking the kids. Not only because we have to do the Amazon drop-offs there or anything, but I like shopping and perusing there. But this is not for sure not a Kohl's shirt. But
it could be Kohl's.
It could be.
Sponsored us,
I guess
right?
it could be.
We could do.
Hey,
Kohl's.
It's Black Friday. There's Black Friday sales at Kohl's. There's Black Friday sales on Extra Points right now. There's Black Friday sales at Home Field Apparel, and this one's going to save you quite a bit of cash. I know, having looked at the cart there, and then you add in the code there, and you're like, all right, so that is quite a bit of savings, and some good stuff there. The Big Sky, they got a great sweatshirt there. If you're in the market,
I saw multiple Big Sky sweatshirts, including worn by Big Sky staffers when we were out there. Also, Montana and Montana State. I might buy a Montana.
I want to say they just released a new Montana State one too, not too long ago. So some pretty slick designs there.
Man, I mean, like you can't go wrong with goofy looking animals, guys. So if you want to go buy a bunch of Montana State stuff, or whatever, you should use promo code Black Friday instead of the Extra Points promo code. That saves you 20% off the entire store. Doesn't matter if you've only been to Home Field once. Never been to Home Field? Go to Home Field every week, which we hope that you do, because then they continue to sponsor us for next year. That's promo code Black Friday. But if you're listening to this, you got to do it quick, because the sale ends November 27th. That's Sunday. So it says Black Friday, but it's Black, so an extended thing. Black Friday at homefieldapparel.com. Now, Real quick before we wrap up here, you were at the Rose Bowl, and I was out of town here. I am not traveling this weekend before I hit the road again for a little while, but you are hitting the road. You are going to my home country.
I am.
Like not Brazil, but you're the place.
Well, we could talk about that. We could talk about Brazil and France
listen,
and U.S.
brother. I've got time for Argentina slander today, but which is deeply funny. But you're going to Ohio, the place of my birth, the place where I grew up, Brian. You're not just going for the game that is going to give me an aneurysm, and I'm seriously considering not even watching. Where are you going before that?
Well, I was just looking at the calendar, and it's like, all right, you fly in obviously after Thanksgiving, and we're going to Columbus for the game, and then I just kind of happened to glance, and I was like, oh, hey, Tulane and Cincinnati's there. I haven't been to Nippert since they've redone it, so it's like, all right, then maybe this could be a decent game, and we'll see if the flights work out. And sure enough, this game actually has some pretty big table stakes, because this could end up producing the Group of Five champion. Not only do you have kind of Cincinnati really trudging along there in the AAC. Yes, they did drop one to UCF earlier in the week, but this game is really going to determine who hosts the title game there for the American. And depending on how the committee is going to view on Tuesday's ranking show, how they're going to view Coastal Carolina, maybe some of the others out of the Sun Belt, this is probably going to produce the Cotton Bowl participant. And whoever that is could end up going up against a Tennessee or an Alabama in the end. So it's going to be some pretty big stakes, and I think a pretty good game. You got a pretty good defense there for the Bearcats going against Willie Fritz's offense there at Tulane. I can't wait to see that, and then drive over to Columbus. I guess, what is it, 90 minutes or so between Cincinnati and Columbus?
You can get there 90 minutes if you are willing to be flexible with speed limits.
Well, the problem is this weekend it's going to be, not only is it going to be cold, and we're going to have to deal with that, but it's going to be very rainy, which I think is going to impact both games.
Crap.
So that is the other thing.
Rainy too.
Yeah. So not only have to deal with the cold and the rainy weather there in Cincinnati, but also for the big game against Ohio State, Michigan, who I think everybody is right now just kind of looking at those injury reports. Neither coach is going to give anything away this week, but I think it's going to be a very fascinating look for both programs in terms of kind of what's coming up, and then the big one on Saturday on Fox at high noon.
I am not excited for this Ohio State game at all. And
does that have to do with what you saw against Maryland, or does that have to do mostly just against just kind of the bad feelings?
There's a couple of different reasons, right? And I've tried very hard to be a serious professional, and part of that, I don't really write about Ohio State all that often anymore. But one, I think any Ohio State graduate of a certain age will always have some level of PTSD about this game, because I did not come of age during the Jim Tressel, Urban Meyer era, where this game was an afterthought almost, because they won every single time. I came of age during the 90s when Cooper was losing almost every single time, often in really embarrassing fashion, right? When they were allegedly the superior team. So I am never able to take this for granted, even when Ohio State's like a 29-point favorite, which they will not be this year. Last year, honestly, didn't sting that much, because that wasn't a championship caliber team, and I think a lot of Ohio State fans in their guts knew it ahead of time. On the second half, I was working. I was on the phone trying to break a Southland story or something, and I just stepped aside. Here, I think it hurts a little bit more, because on paper, I really do think this Ohio State team is good enough to win a national championship, and in my bones, I don't think Michigan is. I think Ohio State can win more ways, but I don't remember where I saw this on Twitter, but I do think it makes sense. Ohio State is built right now, I think, to win track meets. And when you are playing an SEC team in a warm weather stadium or indoors in January in the college football playoff, you need to be able to win a track meet. You need to be able to have skill position players that have that extra gear, and you need to be able to throw the ball that way. And that's Ohio State, I think, is built to cause problems to Georgia or cause problems to LSU or whoever matches up there. Michigan is built to win a tractor pull, a game where it's 28 degrees and it's raining and it's sleeting, and they only have to throw 18 passes. And that will put you in a position to win every Big Ten game that you play. And that used to be how Ohio State was built to win, and it's increasingly not. And I think they are built to win this particular game. Now, if Blake Corum's hurt, or if Michigan has to really throw the ball downfield to win, then it's going to be a challenge. But that becomes the crisis, because you look at this, you think, if Ohio State loses this game, I don't think they make the playoff. They might. The vibes are kind of off with this team. They're really hurt. But But then you just figured the discourse and the message board people and everything, and it would just suck.
Well,
So like,
it's really fascinating too, because of that aspect to this game. Like there's some skepticism, I think, around Ryan Day right now amongst the Ohio State fan base. Is he really
and
the
with
guy?
me, I am going to cop to this here. Serious professional journalist, reasonable thinker, not someone who flies off the handle. I have texted my friends and said, this man is John Cooper with a beard. You go on Twitter, like Google search Ryan Day NPC, and you will, and that's non-playable character. So somebody doesn't have a personality, and you're going to find a lot of stuff about that. I have some question marks, which I understand feels categorically insane to say about a guy that's lost one Big Ten game. Has I think the highest winning percentage over 3 seasons of any Ohio State coach ever. Like, who was recruited at a mostly and possibly elite level with maybe with 1 or 2 position group exceptions, and has done almost anything you possibly
made the national title game, came probably at least a quarter, away from another one earlier in his tenure. Yeah, this is
they're doing really well, and
yes,
yet you can look at this team and think the vibes are off. And what we know, what I think what they can do, and part of that is Jack. Njigma has been hurt all year. I don't think he's going to play. You've got your top 3 running backs are all hurt, and now you're relying on a true freshman who wasn't a can't miss top 50 recruit. You've had an offensive line that's banged up. Your star quarterback has been probably not going to win the Heisman unless he just balls out on Saturday, and has been inconsistent. And you had a secondary, which I think has never played to its potential because they've been hurt the whole year too. Or even the guys that have been playing are not at 100%. And I get that's not. I know that's football. But
I will say Jim Knowles has done, I think, a pretty good job with this year. I mean, especially when you compare him to last year's edition, and just how they tackle and how they're getting after the quarterback much better this year. I think, and you be around the Ohio State team and you talk with coaches around, I do get the sense that they have put a lot of effort into this game in particular. And so that's going to be, very interesting. It is at home. You're going to have all the senior day festivities and all that stuff too. Throw all that in top of the emotions coming out of last year, just the hype that's going to be around this game, meeting undefeated for the first time since 2006. So there's just a whole lot. How are both Jim Harbaugh and Ryan Day going to control those emotions a little bit, deal with the injuries? Yes, but really control those emotions. That's what I'm going to be looking for early on, but should be great atmosphere. And I can't wait to get to Columbus to watch it.
Both of those games should be fun. Nippert's a great place to watch a college football game. I recommend that to anybody. I think both Tulane and Cincinnati are fun. They're good enough to beat a high-level Power 5 team in a bowl game, especially, I hope I don't get any angry DMs from Tulane people, but if you make the Cotton Bowl, there's a pretty good chance that the team you're playing against is going to have some dudes sit out. Yep. Whereas it's going to be the most
how motivated are they?
Sure, which I know they hate that discourse, but yes, if you can go there and hypothetically play Alabama and 4 dudes from Alabama have already gone to the NFL, could you beat them? Yes, you sure can, especially this year's team. So it's worth being invested in that. And then yes, the game is always the game. I'm sure that if I didn't grow up in Pataskala, Ohio, or Granville, Ohio, I could look at this a little bit more dispassionately of wow, what a great anthropological little game here. Let's look at all this passion, kind of like how I was in Montana. Oh, this is great, where there's 25,000 people screaming eat shit Grizz because this means something different. That's what the game is. It's not just about who's going to win the Big Ten. It's not just about the college football playoff. The way with this game happens is almost a referendum on the spiritual toughness of Ohio. There's someone could write a book about that, but it's not going to be me because I will be throwing up in the bathroom and finding excuses.
Well, don't worry. I think that might end up being my column on.
There you go.
You can Ohio. There you go.
There you go. You're welcome. Friends, this is the only episode that we got here this week. Thanks so much for spending some time hanging out with us. We hope that you have a wonderful and safe travel to your holiday destinations over the next couple of days. I hope that your holiday is restful and that you get to spend it with people that you love, eating things that you love to eat. We appreciate your support, whether it's breaking bad news about video games or fun news about the Big Sky Conference, or me having a temper tantrum on Twitter as a grown man because the college athletes from a state that he hasn't lived in a decade are having a bad time. We appreciate all of that. You can, of course, find everything that we write at extrapointsnb.com. You can find all the video work that we're producing across Collegiate Sports Connect, including our sister podcasts and Brian's other podcasting work. And you can find the ticker, which should be an integral part of your daily news consumption at D1 Ticker. Have I forgotten anything? I think that was the big stuff, right?
I think that was it. Again, another episode of HeadCoachU will be out as soon as you listen to this episode. We have Vanderbilt's Clark Lee on. Vandy just beat Florida and got back-to-back SEC wins, on the verge of bowl eligibility going into that Tennessee game. But fascinating conversation with Clark just in terms of what that process is like, kind of building up a program and how you kind of got to work with those emotions and those swings. Cause they started out well, they were 2-0, but you know what, they ran into a meat grinder playing Alabama and Georgia and Ole Miss. And, that was a tough part of the season, but they've emerged, now, really playing pretty well. And so kind of going through that whole process with Clark is a great one. That'll be on the HeadCoachU feed as soon as you can listen to this episode. But fun times ahead on that front, and then plenty more to come as well across the D1 Ticker Empire.
Friends, thanks again. We'll catch up with you after Thanksgiving.